few summers ago, I decided to go for a bike ride with a friend around midnight. It was a relaxing evening, and as the night wore on, we eventually went our separate ways. I had just a couple of blocks left to ride on my own. Due to construction, I had to use the sidewalk for my ride. The streets were empty, and everything seemed fine until I reached the point where I needed to turn left onto my street. There, I encountered a man, perhaps in his 40s, looking a bit disheveled but not homeless. The sidewalk was narrow, and I didn't want to startle him. So, when I got about 6 feet behind him, I decided to politely let him know I was there. I said, "Hey, behind you." However, instead of a friendly response, he turned around with an extremely angry expression. I quickly turned down my street, but to my surprise, he began following me, shouting and using harsh language, threatening violence. I was terrified and didn't want him to discover where I lived, so I made the decision to loop around the block. The truly unsettling part of this encounter was when I looped back around and looked down the street. There he was, standing on my front stop, gazing out at the street as if he knew I lived there. He saw me ride by again, but remained silent. Fearing for my safety, I eventually returned to my friend's place, but sadly, my bike was stolen from the alleyway near my house just 2 days later. I never quite understood what was wrong with that man or why he acted the way he did. It was a truly perplexing and frightening experience. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and my parents had just separated. My mom and I were living in a 2-bedroom apartment on the ground level. I had my own room, but I preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I stayed with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. It was in the middle of summer, and I remember that my mom had a window open in her room, right above the headboard of her bed. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night. I sat up and noticed that our cat was sitting in the doorway of my mom's room. This was unusual because our cat usually slept in bed with us. While I was looking at the cat, it walked into my bedroom. I turned to my mom to wake her up. In just a few seconds, my mom and I both looked back up at the doorway, and to our shock, we saw a man standing there, coming out of my bedroom. My mother reacted incredibly fast. She picked me up and literally threw me out of the screen window. Thankfully, we were on the first floor, and it was a short drop to the ground. My mother quickly followed me, and we began screaming for help. Someone called 911, and the police arrived. However, they didn't find any signs of forced entry. The only thing they noticed was that our front door was unlocked, which made them think the man might have left that way. About a week later, while my mom was cleaning the kitchen, she opened the water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, along with a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. We called the police again, but all they could do was speculate that the man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. My aunt was home alone one day, and she heard someone open the door and walk down the hallway. Her husband, my uncle, wasn't expected home for a few hours, so she decided to investigate. Upon a closer look, she spotted an unfamiliar pair of shoes in the hallway. Panic set in, and she rushed back upstairs to call the police. The police arrived and thoroughly searched the house. To their astonishment, they discovered a homeless man hiding in a storage room. He had my uncle's shotgun with him, but luckily, he hadn't found the ammunition, which was hidden elsewhere. The intruder was promptly arrested. According to my aunt, this was the scariest experience she had ever endured.